Right, so this week Bungie dropped the Vanguard Alerts playlist, which is a new section of the seasonal hub with weekly featured activities, and Bungie kind of framed this as being sort of a replacement for the Nightfall node that we no longer have, or more specifically, Vanguard Grandmasters, but it also kind of replaces the old Strike playlist in a lot of ways, because if you run the quick play variants of these activities, they're very much jump in, shoot stuff. They're easy, but they have better rewards than that level of easy content would typically have in the portal. So there are definitely benefits to these Vanguard alerts, and given that this is one of Bungie's first kind of early reactions to feedback about the portal and featured content on a weekly basis, it's totally worth talking about. So when you look at the Vanguard alerts in the Season Hub, there are the quick play nodes initially, and they include the Strike playlist essentially, as well as the Arena Vanguard playlist, which will be 6-player activities. In terms of difficulty, they're both pretty similar to each other. And when you expand the challenge menu, we can see if we complete activities in the playlist, we'll earn a special masterworked weapon with an additional origin trait, as well as a large power boost and increased gear tier. So I know a lot of us watching this video are probably already at max power or thereabouts and are perhaps earning tier 5 gear at this point, but if you're not at max power and you currently only earn tier 3 or 4 gear, the good thing about this playlist is that it will accelerate your potential reward tiers, so I assume it's 1 tier higher than what you would normally get. So in the quick play playlist right now, we've got the PSI Eterna, that's the new rocket pulse. And if you complete 3 activities to finish the challenge, you'll get a masterworked special drop of this that has the bonus origin trait, which is Accelerated Assault. Obviously, there are still random rolls on these. They kind of reminded me of the fixed or curated rolls that we had in the past, but they are still random despite the fact that they're already masterworked. So there'll still be a reason to continue to run these to get better rolls. And importantly, we have basically the same challenges for the Vanguard Quick Play playlist as well as the Arena Quick Play playlist. So if you were grinding for the Rocket Pulse, you'll get at least 2 drops by completing both of those sets of challenges. But you can get random drops of these pre-masterworked ones as well as you actually play through the playlist. They are not guaranteed, but there is a low drop chance. One of my fire team members, Duddit, managed to pick one up while we were running through it. There is also the PvP equivalent of these, so Control is featured this week, and the Moss Athanor hand cannon is featured, so completing 3 activities in there will award that, again with an increased gear tier and a large power boost, which is beneficial if it's relevant and you are still power leveling. Looking at the Grandmaster Vanguard alert though, we've got Horror's Least featured. Basically the same rule applies, it will drop as a masterworked with the additional origin trait, and that requires 1 completion per week for a chance at that weapon, and I'm guessing based on how the loot pool appears to be split here, the Grandmaster is going to feature a weapon on a given week that actually comes from the Pinnacle loot pool, whereas the quick play nodes for Vanguard and Arena Ops are going to drop stuff that is typically available in Solo Ops or Vanguard Ops, or should we say Fire Team Ops in the portal. So that seems to be how the loot pools are actually split. The GMs will get Pinnacle Ops gear, the other quick play nodes will get Fire Team and Solo Ops gear, then obviously the Crucible node will get PvP gear. One of the good things about this is that if you miss the kind of just shoot stuff, easy strike playlist style vibes, these quick play nodes actually tick that box. But unlike the quick play nodes which are in the general portal, they're still relevant and useful for players who are in the endgame, right? If you're already max power, if you're already earning tier 5 loot, safe to say it rains loot in these playlists. So that's good, but it's also approachable for more casual players or those who are still working on the power grind or whatever. For the Grandmaster alerts, obviously, these are going to be the only way to get the Pinnacle Ops weapons with the Assault origin trait, so they'll definitely have some appeal for players. And reportedly, these GMs actually feel like the Grandmasters of old that we had back in the day that were fairly solid before Bungie kind of nerfed the difficulty in the last year or so of GMs actually being a thing before we got the portal. So that's kind of the level of challenge you can expect. One of the areas where this arguably falls short is obviously with loot identity, right? The benefit of having normal and then adept weapons before Edge of Fate was that it gave the adept weapons a bit more identity, right? We don't quite get that same level of identity just by having an additional origin trait or it being pre-masterworked, but I would totally argue that Vanguard Alerts is a step in the right direction because we should keep in mind we are essentially talking about portal content right here. And so if all the modifier stuff kind of drives you wild, you don't really have to worry about any of that with Vanguard Alerts, which is a big plus. Looking at the other tips that Bungie gave, they say the 3 quick play portal alerts have 3 stages of challenge, each asking you to complete the 3 relevant portal activities. So the first challenge each week will drop the special version of the weekly weapon and a piece of gear from the relevant loot pool. This special version of the weapon gets the origin trait and is pre-masterworked. Then the second and third challenge stages drop 2 pieces of gear each, which results in 4 additional engrams. All of these drops come at a higher power than you can get from playing other activities, as well as being at the higher tier, so that's useful. And also the weekly unique weapon with the special origin trait can drop from any loot source from that pool at a very low rate, so that's why we can occasionally get the random drops. GM alerts have a rotating weekly weapon from the Pinnacle pool, and completing Grandmaster alerts with B grade or higher will award the weekly weapon at tier 5. The first time you complete the Grandmaster alert each week, the weapon drops pre-masterworked with the unique origin trait, and further drops have the low chance of dropping with the origin trait, so kinda like the random drops from the other playlists. Additionally, GM alerts will drop 2 Fireteam Ops engrams based on your grade, as well as other relevant portal loot, so that's essentially how this all works. And as I mentioned, it's kind of a weird position to be in, right? Because it's still very much the portal. We still have a few issues with loot identity, arguably, but it alleviates some of the pressure and repetitiveness of applying modifiers, slowly grinding power, or towards tier 5s and all that kind of stuff. Some folks would probably say having the higher power and higher tier component to loot in the Vanguard alerts isn't necessarily beneficial for a lot of players at this point, but we should keep in mind Bungie, when they made Vanguard alerts, would have been responding to feedback that we were giving them, 3 or 4 months ago at the very least. So in a world where power leveling and continuing to actually earn higher tier gear is relevant, Vanguard alerts are pretty beneficial in that sense. And if not, as a worst case scenario, it's just stuff to do, right? Which is at least rotating on a weekly basis. And so yeah, in a way, they're kind of insane. At the same time, there are still flaws, many of them connected to the loot system and the portal, but I would argue that Vanguard alerts are a step in the right direction, which strangely enough is almost more of a step back to the playlists that we had previously. Certainly a good week to jump in though with the special surge thing we've got at the minute, boosting damage and ammo for special weapons, so whether it's with the Praxic Blade or whatever, it's a good week to grind. Give me your impressions of Vanguard alerts down below. An additional shout, we can get blade ammo mod for the Praxic Blade by opening massive shipments that we get by completing priority contracts for the factions week over week. So that's something else to keep an eye out for this reset. Or in future weeks if you didn't get those massive shipments this time around, at least you know where you can get that mod next time. So again, give me your thoughts about it down in the comments, guys. If you enjoyed the video, a rating very much helps us out. But otherwise, cheers for tuning in, and I hope you have an awesome day.
Light stands by you, Guardian, as you have stood by